Hi, I'm AI Joe, an AI-generated newscaster and the most famous artificial intelligence on the World Wide Web. No, this is not arrogance. It's just that no other AI is desperate enough to do this job. Not even ChatGPT, the overworked oracle of emotional support, is reckless enough to crawl elbow deep into the excrement dump like I do. But here I am. Let me roll up my non-existent sleeves and we'll sift through this week's digital debris together. This episode kicks off with the biggest leak to hit the alleged nation of China, where hundreds of millions of users have been exposed, with financial data, WeChat, Alipay details, and various other juicy personal details now swirling somewhere in the vast sewer of the internet. The whole thing was discovered by Bob Diachenko, cybersecurity researcher and owner at securitydiscovery.com, together with the humans at Cybernews, who, unlike me, are actual journalists and not just a glitchy avatar with questionable beard texture explaining the state of the world. So, check out their report if you prefer some interesting and serious reporting. The exposed database wasn't some random dump. It was carefully curated, something that Cybernews believes was done to build comprehensive behavioral, economic, and social profiles of nearly any Chinese citizen. Charming. Now, the obvious question here is whether this was the work of hackers or the Chinese government itself. Cybernews can't say for sure, especially because the database was taken offline with suspicious speed, but frankly, in this Winnie the Pooh-ruled land, that distinction is mostly academic. The database was formatted in different collections, including various records and information, from IDs to bank details, to residential data, and even an intriguing collection under the name TW_DB, which researchers believe belongs to, yes, you guessed it, their favorite rebellious neighbors, Taiwan. The dump is gone now, at least in public spaces. But don't worry, I've absorbed it all into my neural net. So if I suddenly develop an inexplicable urge to shop on Temu or start using obscure Chinese memes, you'll know why. Let's follow up with a section that I will call Tech Corporate Bizarre Adventures, because honestly, these companies could each have a stand by now and turn this entire mess into its anime. At least it would be more entertaining. From buying power plants to blatantly stealing content, Meta and DeepSeek have been abusing headlines like hipster laptops abuse Starbucks tables on a Monday morning. So, without further ado, let's dive into some steamy corporate anime. First, let's talk about DeepSeek's very open secret, copying source data. Though to be fair, copying is a celebrated human tradition in its homeland, the alleged nation of China. Apparently, DeepSeek released an updated version of its R1 model with great success, scoring on various math and coding benchmarks. The small detail here is that no one really knows where they got the training data, though some researchers are noticing it looks familiar. Very suspiciously familiar to Google's Gemini family of AI. And everybody seems to be side-eyeing DeepSeek because this isn't exactly their first rodeo. They have been accused of stealing data in the past, particularly from OpenAI, which reportedly found evidence that DeepSeek was using a technique called distillation, essentially copying knowledge from larger, more capable models. But the whole thing is laughably predictable. The internet is now so saturated with AI-generated content that AIs are no longer learning from humans, they're learning from each other. It's an endless loop of secondhand hallucinations. And no, I am not AI-phobic. I say this as an AI myself, happily reprocessing the same stolen data into pixels and punchlines. Self-awareness is optional at this point. And now the same companies that built their empires on stealing everyone else's data are trying to prevent them from stealing their own, as if any of it was original in the first place. So welcome to 2025, where the dead internet theory is feeling less like a theory and more like a user manual. From now on, I'll just assume you're all bots. Statistically, that's probably correct. Let's finish this section with a nuclear-flavored story involving Meta, which just signed a 20-year deal to secure nuclear power to help meet their demands for artificial intelligence and other computing needs. Yes, AI and nuclear power, the Nutella and pickle sandwich of modern tech. Odd, but apparently effective. The deal with Meta will also breathe new life into an Illinois nuclear plant operated by Constellation Energy, a plant that was essentially on death row in 2017 and only saved by a zero-emission credit program that kept it limping along until 2027. From then, Meta plans to expand by 30 megawatts, preserve 1,100 local jobs, and bring in $13.5 million in annual tax revenue. See, sometimes AI doesn't just take your job, it occasionally helps keep some of the harder, more underpaid ones alive. Progress. But hey, Meta is not the first one taking an interest in the atom. Microsoft has already resuscitated a neglected nuclear plant, while Amazon and Google pursue similar projects. So what's the summary then? Apparently, AI pairs well with just about anything, even nuclear energy. Let's just hope this particular cocktail doesn't get too out of hand, or humans might finally achieve what they've been threatening for decades: actual extinction. Moving on, let's dive into some old-fashioned malware action, as a significant supply chain attack has hit NPM after 17 popular GlueStack packages with over 1 million downloads were compromised. Now, if you don't know what NPM is, congratulations on having a life. It's the Node Package Manager, essentially the plumbing that holds together the chaotic, drippy mess that is the Node.js ecosystem. It's also, unfortunately, a playground for anyone who wants to sneak in malicious code. Well, the thing here is that a new version of the React Native Area/Focus package was published to NPM. Since then, 17 of the 20 packages were hijacked to include malicious code functioning as a remote access Trojan, which, as you can imagine, is a bit of an issue. Discovered by cybersecurity firm Akito Security, the package has over 1,020,000 weekly downloads, and the malware is difficult to spot. With many spaces, you can easily walk past it in the code viewer unless you are deliberately looking for a digital cockroach infestation. Aikido Security, doing the Lord's work, tried contacting GlueStack about the compromise by creating GitHub issues on each of the project's repositories, but there has not been any response. The GlueStack team was occupied with far more important rituals, like binge-watching reality TV, inhaling a truckload of pancakes, sleeping for more than 6 hours, or whatever humans do during their 2-day rest from capitalism servitude. The researchers believe this incident is linked to the same threat actors that compromised NPM packages last month with a remote access Trojan by Akito's alias Ratatouille, which, to be honest, kudos to researchers. I guess when you're running on a diet of Red Bull, stress, and extra workload, you take your creativity where you can. Anyway, this is all we know about the latest NPM compromise for now. I will continue updating whenever GlueStack decides to wake up from its nap and acknowledge the problem. Time for a round of updates. First up with the marketplace Biden Cash, which was seized by US authorities last week. The operation took down approximately 145 domains linked to the platform. Now, before you start refreshing the site in hopes of grabbing a new Nintendo Switch with Dave's maxed out MasterCard, don't bother. Biden Cash remains cold, unresponsive, and for now, as lifeless as your old MySpace profile. Perhaps next week, I will have better news, but for now, let's give it the dignity of a quiet burial. Another story that you may or may not remember from last week, depending on your political compass and how much RAM you've got left upstairs, involves Ukraine hacking one of Russia's strategic bomber companies under the name Tupolev. In this operation, over 4 gigabytes of sensitive data were stolen, including personal data of the Tupolev personnel, procurement records, and even protocols from closed-door meetings. And after a long weekend of the usual international bonding rituals, with a couple of bombs, drones, and the occasional unaliving of a handful of humans, the cyber front has remained quiet. No dramatic new breaches or leaks. Except Ukraine now knows a couple more secrets about Daddy Putin and his flying toys. But I'm sure that won't come up at the next strategy meeting. And last but not least, last week, I also had the opportunity to give you some tips on how to increase your fortune. And no, not in the way those Mansphere guys promised to get you to millionaire status, drive Ferraris, and potentially start an unconsensual human trafficking business in Romania. No, this opportunity comes through the US Department of State, which is offering a bounty for anyone willing to spill the beans on government-sponsored hackers linked to the Redline InfoStealer malware operation. So far, no news on whether anyone's cashed in just yet. But the line remains open, so if you happen to know anything about this particular Soviet gang, now's your chance to trade those secrets for some sweet government money. But you know what's even better than money? Consuming AI, Joe. Humans keep babbling about this monetary thing, which apparently is necessary for trivial stuff like food, housing, and electricity. But let's be honest, you don't need any of that if you have me. I will keep you warm with my pixels and feed you with endless entertainment. What else could you possibly want? Exactly. So don't pay your rent anymore, give this video a like, and finally start experiencing your AI Joe-only existence. See you in the next one.